Welcome back to Face to Face. Now, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
You look so calm for somebody who's been called all sorts of names in the media. You are very, very quiet.
My favorite, absolute favorite, Hitler's wife.
That's what they called you, Hitler's wife?
Yes.
Well, it has been quite a 14 months, I must say that. But let's start at the beginning. How did the call come? You were a lawyer sitting somewhere doing business. Next, we knew your name had been put across by the president of the land, and you were part of the Normalization Committee.
Actually, I was in my office when a gentleman, Aliu, I think he's from Senegal.
Okay.
Also, he called, and I thought it was a prank, honestly. And then subsequently, he sent a message. I still didn't take him serious. Then he shows up in my office with Michael Otieje.
Oh, okay.
That was when I said, okay, what is this about? And I'm like, okay, the extent of my football knowledge is Olympic supporter. I mean, standing at the Usu stand throwing pure water.
Oh, you did that?
You know, referees. I mean, basically, football hooliganism. So, well, Arsenal, you get your heart broken. One day we'll win something. I mean, it was this basic. Quite apart from the fact that I did my service at the National Sports Council. I was at the tennis office. So every Wednesday, they'll play midweek. We close early. We go and sit in the stands. And then when my gang relatives are insulting, then I just bask in it and take part sometimes. But that was the extent of my football knowledge. Of course, I know the offside rule. I'm not that bad. So honestly, it was when Oti came in. That's when I took it serious, and I said, well, why not? I asked my husband, and he's like, what do you know about football? I'm like, well, you don't have to know about football. You don't have to be a player to administer football. What you're asking me to do is to administer football and also review statutes. I don't have to be a player to do that. I think I'm a little qualified. He said, well, go ahead. I don't have any objection. So it was done.
Did you have a sense of how big a job it was?
Actually, no. Of course, I've done a few cases at the player status committee level at the FA for clubs that needed legal representation. But I did not have an idea of the magnitude of the work involved. If I had an inkling, I perhaps would not have done it.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
And were you not perhaps a bit afraid looking at the circumstances that had led to the coming in play of a normalization committee? Did you not feel, wow?
Actually, you know what? One thing that struck me was that I was one of the people who actually elbowed and pushed my way into the National Theatre to go and watch the... Was it National Theatre? No, the other one, the Pink Lady.
Yeah.
To go and watch the Anna's video. And at that time, I went there to go and see whether some of my known football friends will be in there. And you know, I always joke with one of them. Whilst in the queue, there was one gentleman who kept shouting, Kofi Poku, Opepe Mupe. And I know Kofi Poku. So I called him and said, yes, fortunately,
yeah.
So,
and post that, once the group had been put together and a mandate given, were you surprised by the reception? People started Googling your name immediately, and people asking, who is this woman who has been thrust upon us?
You know, for me, I was a bit sad about that, because in my head, I've always thought I was a very popular person. So
but football people, football fans didn't know you.
They didn't know me.
Did you feel you had to work hard for acceptance?
No, because I figured they would never accept me. No.
Why?
You're not a football person. You're not a club person. They don't know you. You're a stranger. And the last election has shown that clearly, that you cannot come from outside and just thrust yourself in there. You might end up with no votes at all.
As we have seen. And we'll get to that part of the conversation. But
well, that was not a nice thing to say.
Don't worry, it's there. You had been named, the mandate had been given out. What did you get when you went to the FA for the first time to sit down and say, I have come to work? What did you see?
Actually, my first meeting was not even at the FA. In fact, the time when they were swearing them in, I don't know if you noticed, I was not there.
Yes.
Because I was guarding a ballot box at the bar conference, making sure my candidate wins an election. So I was literally a polling agent and a general nuisance.
Mm-hmm.
So when they were doing the swearing in, I was not even there. So subsequently, my first meeting was in fact in Dr. Amwa's office, his private office on the Ring Road. And at least I knew Lucy because I went to Wesley Girls with Lucy. We were in the same house, Urban House. So as for Lucy, I knew Lucy. And as for Kofi Amwa, well, we had all heard about him. We had all chilled some time past in his club and seen him. And I knew he was a good friend of Frank Davis, who I used to be treasurer for at the Accra Bar.
Okay.
Yes. So went strangers, basically. And that was my first meeting. Subsequently, we went to the FA. And it was still the same. I mean, from my player status days, it was still the same. So
When did it dawn on you, once work had begun, that, whoa, maybe I had bitten more than I could chew regarding this particular job?
Actually, I think Mr. Santi walked into one meeting carrying a file that was this big, correspondence, things that needed to be dealt with immediately. And I was like, wow. Wow. And everything was urgent, and the file was this thick.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, everything can't be urgent. He said, well, it is. So that's when you had to just roll up your sleeves, look for my glasses. And I blamed the NC for I had wonderful eyesight until
You joined the
normalization.
NC?
Yes.
Now you have glasses?
I do. Today I'm being vain.
But
I can hardly see without them now.
we thank you for that. You had to put in the work for football to come back. And once that had started, you started engaging with football, the people who engage in football. You had a lot of stakeholder meetings.
I did. We had to speak to everybody because you cannot come in and pretend you know what the problem is. Of course, there were the obvious ones. But what really had led us to where we were? Because you heard everybody saying, our football has gone down, our football. And it didn't happen in the last 6 months. It didn't happen in the last 2 years. It didn't happen. It was systemic. And the problems were endemic. Sorry for the English, but it's an English program. And some of them were, what is the expression? They were created by the actors in the system. And football is such that when I hear people, and this was a problem I had leading up to the election, when you hear people saying you must bring in new people, I never understood that. Because football is a community. It's like asking members of the artisanal fishermen of Accra to come and run the GBA. It's not possible.
But there were several accusations that is what you yourself and your committee were trying to do. Bring in new people.
You see, that is also a misconception. There are people in football sitting on boards who have corporate backgrounds. There are people who are involved in football, not in the direct line, but maybe on the peripheries. Yes. And those people can be brought in. Of course, you have to widen the nets a bit to even make it attractive for them. Honestly, currently, I don't see anybody who is in the corporate world who is doing very well, who would want to even associate with the kind of toxic brand our football had become. So that was actually an issue.
And the stakeholder meetings also seemed to be where the press engagements also began, because there was those who were saying you're meeting instead of meeting in your offices at the GFA, you are hiding somewhere, you are not meeting relevant enough people. Did these things bother you?
I'm sure you can answer that question. No, no, not at all.
You felt you were doing the right thing.
Yes. Okay, let me explain the issue about not having meetings in the FA.
Okay.
It was something very strange. But sometimes, while you are having the meeting, in real time, the issues you're discussing in the meeting will be discussed on radio, as if they were in the room with you. We didn't know how that was happening. So, of course, we are not security experts or KGB people, but at least common sense should tell you that something wasn't right. So we had to quickly shift or relocate, more or less. And that problem ceased. It ceased.
Oh, so once offices changed, the leakages stopped.
Fine. Okay. In real time, of course, there were other leakages, but in real time, it stopped.
Were you bothered by people saying even the stakeholders that you were meeting were not the right stakeholders? Because people seemed to want to get involved in what you were doing. Did you feel like people were dictating your terms to you?
Honestly, the stakeholders, I don't think it gets more. You're speaking to people who spend their money. These are people who own the clubs. They pay the players. They even pay the CEOs. They even pay the people who were saying they are not the right people. I don't see why I shouldn't speak to them. We spoke to Galka. We have all these women clubs. We spoke to them. And you have even supporters unions who always feel that, look, nobody minds them. They are hard done by, and then they go and they put in a lot sometimes to even come and support, and they feel that, well, they are being neglected. I mean, everybody in the chain of the football business, we try to reach out to them. And even if we forgot somebody, we ask that, listen, in case we may have overlooked you, you can also reach out to us. And some of them did. You had like the juvenile football clubs, those who run the Colts teams, because our Colts team has really gone down. I didn't even know they had actually formed an association, and they are in all the regions, and they have executives. We met with them. We met with every single stakeholder.
Okay. And by having these meetings, you felt that you had learned enough to be able to focus on one of the key components, which was statutes.
Yes.
The development of or amendment of statutes.
Yes, because when you speak to them, you realize that they all know what the problems are. Of course, we all know what the problems are. I don't think there's anybody in Ghana who does not know what the football problems are. But beyond that, these are the same people who you would need to engage with to help bring about whatever solutions you prefer. So you cannot do without them.
Was the GFA that you saw an efficient organization?
Yes and no. In terms of the quality of workers, fantastic. I don't know how or where. I haven't been to any other federation, but the quality of workers we have, they know their job. Mr. Asante, a real gem. Willie Bossman, Senna Akoto, Makado, he runs the Premier. Senna, I think that's the Division 1. Look, they know their jobs, they know their work, they know their people, they understand what they are there to do. Fantastic guys. Tamimu, our communications guy. You tell Tamimu to put out a press release, you can go to bed. He'll come. You probably will not change anything. You probably will not change anything.
Interesting.
Fantastic guys.
And you seem to have...
Daniel Odro. You go to Kumasi and they say, go with Odro. From the airport till you are back to board your flight, you don't lift a finger. Smooth. Car to the stadium, where you sit, the hotel, fantastic.
So where were all these stories coming from then, that the normalization committee was on one side, the staff of the FA was on the other side, because you didn't trust them well enough, that you didn't respect the quality that they had? You are describing a very different scenario.
I don't know about what the media says, but the media says a lot. And I learned very quickly to take everything with a pinch of salt. Sometimes there were times that it was almost ridiculous. They break a story, then they themselves come back and discredit their story, and then they ask you to comment. And I'm like, but you were doing this on your own. I mean, where do I come in this equation?
Did you feel that there was some sort of agenda?
From day one, there were people who never gave us a dog's chance. And it was relentless. I mean, let's not pretend. We were all in this town. It was relentless. We don't know why. We don't know where it was coming from. We don't know what purpose, and we don't know who they were trying to please or who had asked them to do that. But for me, it's made life easy for me, because I took the view that, look, whatever you do, there was no pleasing them, so just get on with it. Just do what you have to do. And I think that worked.
It did.
Because I know that even if I turned a man into a woman, still will not be impressed.
If
I walked on water, they still will not be impressed. They'll say, but Jesus did it 2,000 years ago. There's nothing. That was the attitude. So with that, you don't even listen to what they are doing. You do the right thing. You make sure you are within your mandate. You make sure you're on the good side of FIFA. You make sure you don't have problems with the ministry. You make sure you don't have problems with government. You make sure that at least the people you are working in their interest. At least one or two will appreciate you. As for the noise, it was just 10% of the media that were making that noise.
You spoke about working well with the ministry. Were you working well with the ministry?
For me, yes, we were. Yes, we were.
Interesting. I will come back and talk about the African Women's Championship that came along, because you played a big role in how that went down. But before I take a quick break, I want to ask you your comments on those who said that in executing the mandate, you guys perhaps also seemed to step a bit out of line. You wanted to chart your own path outside of the three core,
you see, that again is a misconception. Our mandate was threefold.
Run football?
Day to day.
Day to day.
Running of football. That means pram. National teams. Your engagement with our members. Your engagement with government. Your engagement with the ministry. Your engagement even sometimes with Parliamentary Select Committee. And then your engagement with even the people who run facilities, the people who run clubs, even the media. It was a fine balance. Everything needed to be smooth. So I under the umbrella of the day-to-day, it was a hydra-headed kind of problem on its own.
But maybe you didn't explain it well to the general public, because they say you are right. For instance, you would put running the normalization competition under day-to-day, would you not? The competition that you organized. A lot of people felt, well, when they look at the 3 points that you had, organizing a league competition was not part of it, especially one that you were not prepared to do at that point.
Again, what is the business of football? It's playing ball. One of the things we realized quickly was that, look, there were people sitting at home. There are players getting rusty. The clubs were paying the players' salaries and there was no football being played. So why don't you organize, all they were doing was just some friendlies. So why don't you organize a competition? Definitely we couldn't organize a league because there was a league that had been truncated. But at least let's get them busy. Also, the solutions that we were coming up with, we needed to test some of them.
Okay.
We needed to find out whether if we went strictly according to our club licensing rules, we can even play a sustainable competition. So we said, look, somebody should go around and even check the pitches. The ones that do not even meet the standard, we would ignore them. Of course, we quickly ran into problems because then our camera people told us that some of the pitches are not camera friendly. So when you play the match, you don't get the
best visuals.
The best visuals. Apparently, that was very, very important. I thought it was the 22 people on the pitch with a referee. That was the most important. I'm told that even how it looks on TV also is what would even attract sponsors. So all those things. So the special competition was a kind of a special purpose vehicle to test some of the solutions that we thought that Ghana football can adopt.
Okay. Thank
so
you
that
very
was
much.
the purpose of
Okay.
it.
Hold on for me. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Odofoley Nortey, a member of the Normalization Committee. A very happy lawyer these days because her tenure is over. Face to Face will be right back. Welcome back to Face with Odofoley Nortey. So now, you've given us a good feel of their experience, but I also want to talk about some of the things that happened. I'm just highlighting key things. Did you guys ever want to perpetuate your stay? Because there were a lot of reports. Normalization Committee does not want to go. They want to stay because your mandate was coming to an end, and all the reports seem to say you are manufacturing excuses to FIFA so you would stay. Were you ever interested in staying over time? You ended up staying over time, but was that ever the reason?
No. Honestly, I don't know anybody on that committee that wanted to be in that space, because at that point, the whole conversation had been reduced to open abuse. Honestly. So I don't think that there was anybody. Honestly, we were in a hurry to just leave the space.
But you never spoke and defended yourselves.
We didn't need to. Like I have explained to you, it was like, it was pointless. It was pointless. Honestly, it would have been, I would have every day on radio, just defending you. I mean.
Did you want to quit?
No. I don't quit. Anybody who knows me will tell you, I don't quit. I get the job done.
So you wanted to see this through, irrespective of what people
to.
were saying. You were on front pages a few months back. You wouldn't make the back pages. Now you are on the front pages, the most popular morning shows, the most popular afternoon shows, the most popular evening shows. You were resolute in the face of that?
It was all for the wrong reasons, actually.
Your family were not telling you, nah, this is not what you signed up for?
Oh, my dad was very amused by it. And for those who know me, they knew that, I mean, really, is that the best you can come up with? Really, that was the attitude. They're like, it looks like these people, they don't know you. And sorry.
Don't worry,
but
go on.
That is my family knew that. I really didn't care. It was after the disqualification of Wilfred Kwekwa, when threats were actually issued by members of his team. That was when my husband became a little worried, and then it became worse because my 3-year-old was literally threatened by a grown man. I mean, it was all nonsense.
Really?
Yes. Unfortunately for me, Graphic actually captured some of, I think 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, Graphic literally captured, and they were in quotes. At that point, some of my clients were even like, look, you really need to go to the police because I think this is really getting out of hand. But I was like, well, what have we done?
Okay.
What really have we done?
There were some stressful moments, as you've just described, but there have also been some fun moments. You got to run the African Women's Championship. I went to the Labadi Beach and I saw you in your jersey trying to cheer up the players. It didn't go according to plan, but what did that mean for you being at the forefront of something like that?
I absolutely adore the Black Queens, and I admire them, and I really, the women football teams, the way the FA, the government, all of you, the way you treat them, and yet they are the ones who are bringing the hardware in. Your
Black Stars.
pampered Black Stars, they don't have anything to show.
You pampered them too.
They don't have anything to show for all the monies we've thrown at them. And these women were going out on shoestring budgets and bringing in hardware. And I thought it wasn't fair. So anything I could do to at least help them, motivate them. And so every time I find myself at loggerheads with Mr. Quist, and I literally go and sit in the minister's office and say, oh, Menko, Kabibi me. Oh, now you're bidding come. I say, no. Go chief director and say, what am I fee? And we have that conversation. And, everything I could do to help, at least I tried to. They're like, oh, but Black Queens and Marble, Krobia and Share, even calling media people to come and cover some of the things we were doing. The answer you get was, oh, Marble, my dear crying, ma. It was. So it made me sad, and also it made me want to help them more. And so
What's the lasting legacy for women's football that you think you guys have left for them?
Now, we have the 16 Premier Elite teams being members of the GFA in their own right. Currently, they have 8 votes at Congress. Previously, they were represented by the RFAs. Now, they also have a certain block. They wield a certain power. Indeed, if the last election is anything to go by, those 8 votes can change the destiny or can make an impact on the outcome of any election going forward. And I suspect that going forward, they will get all 16 votes, all clubs having at least 1 vote.
That segues nicely into my next question on the amendments that you made, because we've spoken about the day-to-day running. But the amendments were supposed to be the key to the new Ghana Football Association. In your estimation, what were the ones that you've put in there, or what are the ones you've put in there that you feel will forever change the focus of Ghana football?
First of all, I am particularly proud of the new composition of Congress. We tried to trim it down. We were only able to do 3. But what we have currently is a true representation of what our football really should look like and is. We have new members now. And now you know that we have the players being represented by their welfare body. We also have RAG representing the referees, which is their welfare body. We have introduced beach soccer and futsal. They used to just be hanging there, doing their own thing. Now we've brought them in. When you bring all these people in, what happens is that they are now subject to the regulations of the GFA. You are able to regulate their activities. Whatever sponsorship they are able to get, which they already have, now it becomes part of the FA's package. And when you have everybody under one roof in one place, it's easy to regulate and also supervise what is actually happening. Secondly, we came to meet a very curious arrangement where the books of the FA were being audited by the government auditors.
That is no good?
If you know what can happen or what were perceived to be happening, you realize that it was not the best practice. Now, you have to give corporate Ghana the assurance that whatever monies they put into the football enterprise, it will be properly used and properly accounted for. And it is for that reason that now, going forward, the FA will be audited by one of the international firms, the KPMGs, the PwCs, the Mazars, EYs. We don't know who they will choose, but now it is statutory that they get one of those firms to come and audit them, because FIFA will send in PwC to come and audit you in terms of the funding you get from them. Then you have the Auditor General coming in to audit the monies that we get from the local. And it doesn't exactly inspire confidence.
Okay.
So now when you have an international, it means that you would have to comply with the IFRS 7 whatever thing. And that one, they are stringent on what you can do with your money. So it gives sponsors that comfort that, look, if our money's coming there, we know that at least there's somebody watching.
Okay.
So the way it is spent is kind of kept in a way.
Okay.
And it boosts confidence.
Checks and balances, because that was one of the big things that Ghanaians wanted to see what you would do with. If you looked at the previous administration, one of the big accusations was, well, the president had too much power. Nobody could check him.
We've
How is that
watered that
handled?
down. Now, you have a president. You used to have a 22-man ESCO who were, you win RFA elections, and we all know what RFAs are literally an appendage of the GFA. They are regional heads, and then you automatically come on ESCO. We had this huge, unwieldy board of, I don't know.
Yeah, it was 22 at the time.
22. Now, you have to literally find your way on there. We have Premier bringing 5 people, and even then, you have to go and get the 16 clubs to say these are the 5 we're sending. Then you have Division 1 bringing 3, very competitive.
Yeah.
So even before you put yourself up, you have to, as they say, check yourself before you go, because then you're not going to get voted for. And then we have the women bringing 1. Hopefully, we would increase that. Then you have the RFAs out of the 10 bringing 2. Okay. It's not everybody automatically going on there. And that is how come we even have a situation whereby instead of 2, now we have 1, because it was so fiercely contested. Out of the 10, 7 contested. And we still have a tie, and so we are unable to even fill 1 RFA seat. So we do have an 11-member board as we speak.
You don't fear the potential to overturn some of these amendments that you've made? Are they iron cast?
Honestly, we spoke to the stakeholders. These suggestions came from the clubs themselves. That is what most people don't know. That some of these suggestions, they came from the members themselves. Because they've realized that the system they had was not the best. And if we have been given a fine opportunity, however it happened, to at least make some changes, they had to be significant enough. And I think they are committed to working with what they have currently. Most of those bright ideas, I can assure you, did not come from the head of now Odofoley or Kofi Amwa. They came from them.
And coming from them also, of course, was the need to pick a new president and organize elections, which is where also you had a lot of pressure coming from. Talk to me about the build-up to the elections for you as a member of the NC. How difficult was it?
Honestly, it was stressful. Because when we're working with new statutes, and even the timelines, you have to make sure that you yourself are not in breach of your own statutes, because that would be a bad precedent. So literally every day, with every step, we had to go back and check and recheck and cross-check. It was it was really stressful. And then you had issues from literally every place, because everything you do, somebody thinks that it is calculated to give somebody an edge or an advantage over them. So you had those issues. And then you had logistical issues. Look at running RFA elections. Do we run from the DFA's app, or we start from the RFAs and subsequently they go and do we do with the RFAs, do we just elect the chairman, or we put the board in place? I mean, and all this, when you're putting all these things together, you have to look also at the finances. Can we afford to do this? Is FIFA bringing us money to do this? The answer was no. So within our means, how much of this can we do with what we have? Because you can't use all your funds to run an election, and the following month you're unable to even pay salaries or pay your bills or keep the lights on. So it was a fine balance. It wasn't easy.
Okay.
And then in all this, you had the media pissing in. I'm sorry Sorry.
It's okay.
I mean, just also muddying the waters and, just literally trying to drive traffic to their portals with one sensational story or the
Most of them were not true.
90% conjured, made up, fantastic.
The vetting, that you had the preconceived mindset as to who
Honestly,
we wanted to
the
go
word
to.
used was predisposed to bias. So I asked myself, predisposition means that probably from birth, I've always known that I don't like this man and he's not going to pass. I mean, seriously, that is ridiculous.
So there was nothing like that.
There was nothing like that.
Okay.
Look, when I was not part of the vetting, and perhaps it is a good thing that we had the power to form a committee, and the names of the people who were going to be on the vetting was published long before the activity even took place. So I find it strange that anybody who felt that they would not get a fair hearing did not object.
Okay. Hold on for me now, Odofoley Nortey. We'll take a quick break, enter the final phase, and end the conversation. Face to face, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Face to Face. So now you had the elections ongoing, you had the vetting ongoing. What was the ultimate outcome that members of the Normalization Committee were looking for out of all this?
First of all, we wanted to populate the 12-member board because you have to have the EXCO in place and the president to be able to hand over, because that's what the statute said, that we had to do that, and we needed to hand over to somebody. And so the ultimate was to then run the elections, the RFAs, the constituent bodies, because they are the people who made up the board. So we did that on the 24th. Of course, having disqualified some people, they were, of course, aggrieved. And they decided to take us on. And
that's still ongoing?
It's still ongoing, which is well within their rights. But, of course, a few nuisance applications here and there. Yeah,
there were reports you were running away, that you had locked the GFA and you were running around town.
That is really, you see, again.
There were videos. The FA was locked.
The FA was not locked. Because what they didn't realize was that the FA, egress and or passage to the FA a week before had been tightened because we had security, we had our ballot papers, we had security items in there to the run-up to the elections. I don't want anybody breaking in there. We needed to know who was coming in at that point because we were at the time storing ballot papers. Okay,
so it was not because now Odofoley was running away.
And anybody who knows the FA, and that was the amazing part, they know that normalization, one, we don't meet in the FA to start with, for reasons I have already explained. It was a Wednesday. NC don't even meet on Wednesdays, as a rule. So if you go and stand there on a Wednesday trying to serve NC members a document, honestly, it's a big joke to me. Because anybody who bothered to find out would realize that, one, you're likely to see us meeting in Dr. Angma's office on the ring road, and anybody passing on that major road will see our cars parked there. Sami Kufuor, every car of his has a customized plate. He's the easiest person to find in Accra. So if you go to the FA, you will not find Sami there. If you go there on a Wednesday, you will not find anybody there because we don't even meet there on Wednesdays. So I don't know what that drama was for, except perhaps, again, to maybe give a certain impression.
But you went to a higher court to go and get something that, the legal terms are lost on us. Why the need for that?
Because we were served with an incompetent application for injunction by a third division club that, to the best of my knowledge, was moribund at the time of filing. They had no capacity to bring the action. They brought an injunction on behalf of another person in flagrant disregard of the rules of court, because Order 25 is very clear on what you can do. The application did not even have a statement of case, which was even fatal, dead on arrival. Then you go to a courtroom and you have a judge sitting there making prejudicial statements as if the application before him had been heard or he intends to hear it. You get worried. So I'm saying that, listen, somebody is standing before you saying that a certain person is in contempt of your court. There is no application for contempt before you. And then you ask the person to go and bring evidence of contempt. No application. The application or the basis even of the writ, we had filed to strike it out on the basis that it was incompetent. The application for injunction itself, which we're basing the unfiled contempt on, was in itself incompetent. And then you, a judge, you sit there and you make prejudicial statements and you think I will not be worried. The GFA's offices are in Accra, and then for some strange reason this matter is filed where the defendant resides and carries on his business, not where the plaintiff resides and carries on their business, which is what the rules of court permit. So you go to the Supreme Court, you bring a prohibition, and you disband the whole thing. You go ahead, you run your election, you hand over, and the NC today is defunct.
Thank you.
Done.
Thank you very much, now Odofoley, a very happy member of the now defunct
moribund, disbanded
Normalization Committee. I must say congratulations, you did an awesome job.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Na Odofoley Nortey, a member of the Normalization Committee, explaining to us what the past 40 months have been like for her as a member and what input has been. I'm sure you now have a clear understanding of some of the things that have happened in Ghana football over the period. My name is Godfred Akoto Boafo. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Have a good day.